Come, walk down the winding path. Don't mind the spooks and monsters. They stay hidden within the trees. There are mysteries in this world that you need to know, and paranormal truths that need to be told. Come, step up into the caravan while we share tales of old, as well as new accounts about things you thought only existed in your nightmares. Welcome, lore folks, back inside the caravan. Tonight I have my sister on with me. Ever since we were children, we have been interested in the supernatural and paranormal, having a lot of strange encounters together. In fact, episode 2 of The Caravan, Intoxicated Time Slipper, was one of those childhood experiences. Tonight, however, we are wanting to share our passions about vampires and werewolves. It's hard for me to remember what exactly sparked my interest in vampires, or what the first vampire movie I saw actually was. Most likely, it was that I read a version of Dracula and took off from there. And since I'm mentioning movies, I would have to say, hands down, that my favorite vampire movie is Interview with a Vampire. What's your favorite movie, sister?
Vampires or werewolves? Because
Let's go with both.
I have to agree with you on Interview with a Vampire. That's a really good one, although the old school part of me also likes the original black and white Dracula with Bela Lugosi.
Mm-hmm.
Werewolves? I really don't have a favorite werewolf movie per se, although
Right.
I do kind of like Silver Bullet and American Werewolf in London.
Right.
Those are two great ones.
I can't remember the name of the movie, but Del Toro, he was in it. It was like Wolfman, and there was Anthony Hopkins. Have you seen that one?
Yes, I did.
Really like that one.
That was really good. I really liked how they played that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's for sure. Me too.
But I've always been more interested in the folklore as opposed to Hollywood's take on it.
Right. So here's my question for you. Since obviously I'm the vampire person and you're the werewolf person, if you had that opportunity, if somebody came to you and said, for a fact, I have proof that they're real, I have proof that you can be one, hands down, would you do it?
It really depends on the conditions. I mean, is it a voluntary transformation? Do I get to choose? Or is it one of those from, things like The Howling, where you just turn and you have no control whatsoever? If I had a safe place to turn and I could choose when to transform, I probably would.
Nice.
But if it was completely uncontrollable,
right,
I don't think I would take that risk.
And even though it would be completely controllable, let's say, I would think that would be pretty painful. Would you still do it even though there's that crazy bone cracking transformation?
Quite possibly. I mean, I'd have to weigh the possibilities, but once it starts, there's no one going back, so I got to deal with it one way or the other.
That's true. That's true, man.
It doesn't dentist.
It's a question that I ask a lot of people, and it's amazing to see everybody's answers. So far, it really seems like there's an even amount of people that would turn into one or the other, and an even amount of people that would not give up their human lives and actually want to see what's what's beyond the bridge after we pass. But I would have to say for myself, hands down, if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, I can turn you into a vampire and give you eternal life," and I think that I would do it. Even if I had to avoid the sun, and just had to be out at night, I think I would still do it. I mean, I'm always
But
out at night as it is.
Here's the twisted question, though. If
Okay.
it involved killing people, if you had to kill people and drain their blood. I know. I'm saying you turn your sister into a murderer.
Man. Well, you know what, though?
For my part with a werewolf, I get the excruciating pain. For your part as a vampire, you get to murder people.
Well, okay, how about this? I just drain you of your blood a little bit, but I let you live. I just take some of it. How about that?
I'm sure you can make a deal with somebody at a blood bank, right?
Yeah, hey, there we go, right? Yes. Yes. That's so epic. I love it.
I wonder if Advil will help with maybe a little Tylenol.
Well, hey, I would have that hypnotism trick. So, all the supplies of Advil and morphine if you need it. And we'll just make it a party.
Right? Now, speaking of that, when you go into more modern pop culture, everything these days seems to be focused around an animosity and a conflict between vampires and werewolves.
Right. Yes.
You see it everywhere. It's in movies, it's in books. But I was doing a little research, and I am not convinced that has anything based in lore. I'm fully convinced that it is a construct of Hollywood.
That makes me have another question. Maybe I should have looked it up. I wonder what came first, werewolves or vampires? Because they're both a being that is made from a human coming back from the grave.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it depends on what part of the world you're in as well. Because in my research, I found evidence where the legends came up concurrently. So there really wasn't a before and after. They just both kind of happened. And then on the same token, I've come across myths and legends where beliefs hold that if a werewolf corpse is not properly destroyed, that it would return as a vampire.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me. That's cool because that's a new one for me. I haven't heard that one very much. I think the first time that I heard about that was about a month ago.
Yeah, I haven't heard a whole lot about it, and I haven't researched it in depth, but I have seen it pop up in different places, and in some kind of gruesome where it's actually in the form of wolves which prowled battlefields, and they would drink the blood of dying soldiers.
Wow. You know what? I'm going to go back to that question of would you be a vampire or a werewolf? Because if that's the case, all right, if you're a werewolf and if your corpse isn't disposed of properly and you come back as a vampire, okay, if you're just a vampire, then you can be killed with a wooden stake, right? Well, if you're a werewolf and let's say you get shot with a silver bullet, but your body, let's say the person doesn't know about it or whatever, isn't properly disposed of, you're not dead. Now you get to come back as a vampire. So you're even more invincible. You know what I mean? And so that would be the one condition that would make me choose
but I have a counter
vampire.
to that.
Oh, okay.
is that silver, the whole being killed by a silver bullet
Uh-huh.
or being killed by silver is a more recent belief, apparently, from what I've
Oh,
read.
really?
And that, yes, and that actually silver was believed to repress the transformation. And potentially, if a werewolf was stabbed with a silver dagger, per se, that it would revert the werewolf to human form.
Oh,
And I don't think that's true in all legends, but I did come across
right.
that in a couple of different places.
Nice.
And so one of the theories for that is that it was a mistranslation.
Oh.
Yes, because it was that the whole because it's not a feature of folklore necessarily that silver kills the werewolf. That's more a belief that popped up in the mid-1700s. And some researchers believe that the silver weakness comes from the mistranslation of silvered metal, which refers to quicksilver, or more commonly, mercury.
Oh, nice. Okay. Huh.
So,
Ooh.
because a lot of things, once Hollywood gets their teeth into something, so many of the original ideas get lost.
Right.
And you really have to dig up, some of these other things. But werewolves don't even have to be wolves. They can be foxes. They can be lions, jaguars.
Oh man, I've heard of there. It's like a legend over in Africa about a werelion.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Another common one is weretigers.
Whereabouts in the world for that? Do you know?
I think the weretigers are from India.
Wow. Wow. So all over the world, there's werebeasts.
Yes.
That's
and
cool.
There are even some Native American myths, although I really haven't looked into them, that touch on some of that as well.
Wow.
But I really think that a lot of that starts going into more spiritual things rather than were creature transformations. And I think it just kind of gets lumped in. I could be wrong.
Right.
Again, not something that I really looked into because most of my research tends to go towards the werewolf proper, if you want to call it that.
Right. Well, it's just crazy to me how these myths and legends are all over the world, whether it's about the werebeasts or the vampires and how similar it is. I was going to share with you a couple things that I found in regards to the lore with vampires. I came across an article on Live Science, and I'll just kind of read what they had. They were talking that Slavic traditions, that they say that vampires are human corpses that have returned from the grave, and even that is only a few hundred years old. Older beliefs on vampires, however, have them in the supernatural, demonic type of entities whom don't take any type of human form at all. And there's actually reason to believe tales of vampires originating from Egyptian folklore, being a demon that was summoned. And tales of such creatures can be found worldwide. In Asia, they are known as the Chongshi, which is an evil spirit that attacks the living and drains them of their life energy. There are also blood drinking deities mentioned in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And in Greece, there is an entity known as the I'll probably pronounce it wrong, Kalikanzaro, which spends its time in a different world and only emerges during the 12 nights before Christmas. And here's the really crazy part. According to the Greek legend, any child born on one of those nights will actually become one of those vampiric creatures. Can you believe
You
that?
know, I can't believe the myth. In fact, I ran across mentions of children born on December 24th, specifically,
Really?
becoming werewolves. So, I mean,
Really?
how messed up are you if you're born on the 24th? Do you become a werewolf or a vampire?
Oh man. That's so crazy. With how much the lore, I don't know, correlates or goes hand in hand. I wonder if one was born from the other. If there was a
I really think they
mistranslation
were.
somehow. Mm-hmm.
Uh, Now, with werewolf origins, you can go back quite a ways to suggestions of tribal shamans basically channeling spirits or being
Mm.
able to um, attune with nature to the point of being able to transform into these animals.
Right.
And the earliest mention that I could find of werewolves, because I had to brush myself up a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
in my little bit of research I did before here to
Mm-hmm.
refresh, was a possible mention in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian epic poem,
Hmm. Right.
where Gilgamesh jilted a potential lover because she turned her previous lover into a wolf. So
Nice.
you go back to these, and it makes you wonder, where did they actually originate? But a
Right.
lot of the ways to become these creatures, both werewolf and vampire, I've noticed,
Mm-hmm.
overlap. One of the
Right.
big ones is being the seventh son. And worse yet, if
Oh.
you are the seventh son, or in some cases, seventh child, of a seventh child.
Oh, right. Oh man.
And I've found instances where they say that if that's the circumstance for you, you'll turn into a werewolf. And then I've likewise seen it for a vampire.
Wow.
And then you have
Hmm.
your respective ways that are solely one or the other. Getting um, bit by your respective creatures and overlap,
Right.
but it's specific. If I get bit or scratched by a werewolf, I turn into a werewolf. You get bit by a vampire, you turn into a vampire.
Right.
Um, I remember actually when I was a little kid, and it's probably one of the first instances of where my interest in werewolves manifested itself is our grandmother bought me this short little subscription to these uh, books about monsters and things like that. And it had
Oh, cool.
vampires, it had zombies, it had werewolves. Frankenstein's monster was featured on one of them.
Really?
Um,
Man, that
yes.
sounds like a cool subscription. I had like Ranger Rick.
Well, it was super simplified for kids, but it was amazing. And I was
Mm.
absolutely in love with it. And I remember reading in the booklet for the werewolf specifically how to become a werewolf. And I
Nice.
vowed when I was, knee high to a grasshopper here, that when I grew up, I was going to go out and I was going to try these things to try to become a werewolf and see if it would
Yes.
work.
Oh my God, I love
So,
it.
apparently, I've been interested in becoming a werewolf since the single digit ages.
Oh.
Um, and one of those ways was drinking water from either a place where a wolf has also drank,
Oh.
or a little more specifically, water that has settled into a wolf's paw print.
Wow. Nice.
So,
That's crazy.
oh yeah, I mean, there's so many other ways. I mean,
Man.
being cursed or conceived even under a new moon or sleeping under a full
Oh.
moon on a Friday. How specific is that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, well, that's very specific. Oh my gosh, that's nuts. I'll tell you, I don't know if you know this, and I think I've mentioned it before on a previous episode. So, and it's a little weird, but I was so into vampires when I was a teenager, right? And like I
Hmm.
was learning about all like there's this whole I don't know, what you call it, like a subculture or whatever, underground culture, I don't know. Where there's these people and they dress the part, and there's these vampire balls and there's these but they
Oh
do
yeah.
take it as far. I think they're called sanguinarians, where they actually will drink each other's blood, and they say it's all willingly and everything. But and I actually met some of these people, right? Really cool people, just,
Oh
super into the
wow.
culture. Yeah. And we'd chat and everything. Well, man, I was actually going to save up my money, right? And purchase dental, like dentist made vampire fangs and actually have them
Oh.
implanted.
Oh,
Oh
that's
man,
great.
like permanent vampire teeth. I was,
Oh.
yeah, it was totally a thing for me.
Well, I can't say anything. I was all gung ho to drink, muddy wolf foot
Popping
water.
water. Oh my God, we're so weird because this is something that the listeners need to know too. We didn't grow up together, okay? We live like what,
On
four and
opposite
a
sides
half
of the
hours
state.
apart.
Yeah,
Huh?
you lived in um well, I live in northeastern Oregon and you grew up in
Mhm.
northwestern Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got quite the distance
So,
between us. And we would only see each other during the summertime. And it was every summer from when I was like what, about a year old until I was about 14, I think.
actually there was a couple of years before that because I want to say you were about 10 and then we went a couple of years without seeing each other. And then
Oh,
it was
right.
14 that we saw you were 14 when we saw each other again. I remember that because that
Right.
was about the time where
That's when
the
the
incident happened
intoxicated
about
time
the
slipper came up.
exactly
Right.
right the house that I lived in at the time, the creepy place. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was several years after that that we saw each other again. So it's been very intermittent for
Right.
our, you know, being in the same physical space.
Right. And it's significant for this too because it's just so funny that we were both so gung ho about these things, you know, growing up so far
And
away, but we were both going to become vampires and werewolves.
oh, and more so, not even the space, but the fact that we grew up with vastly different family dynamics.
That's true.
For me, our maternal grandmother raised me,
Right.
whereas
Yeah, and I
you
went
grew
to
up
my
with
father.
your paternal father or paternal family.
Right.
So the
Yeah,
family
no,
that raised
that's
us
true.
wasn't even related.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So that makes it even crazier. We're just really that weird.
Yeah,
And
pretty
before I
much.
forget too, because I have a couple more vampire legends that I wrote down from around the world, and one of them's really crazy, and I wanted to share them with you. Um,
Oh yeah.
the first one was from Russia, and again, I'm probably gonna say this wrong. It's either upper or Uper, I'm not really sure. It looks like a human, but it has metal teeth. And it has this
Ooh.
insane thirst for blood, but it will eat your heart for fun. Okay. And then in Australia, and this one's really weird, it says there's the Yara Mayahu, and it's small with this large head, but all over its fingers and toes are these like suckers. And these suckers have razor sharp teeth on them, and so they'll jump out of these trees and they'll attach themselves to you, and then they start sucking your blood through their fingers and toes. And I'm just like,
Okay.
whoa, I've never heard a vampire like that before. That's insane. And then the last one is from Czechoslovakia. It says they have the Nelapazi. I'm not really sure. Again, I'm not good at pronouncing things. But it is just a walking cadaver, which is said to have the ability to destroy an entire village like at once.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are the vampires of the world. Oh, I guess I should say here, to get a little bit more realistic with all of this, and you know, I'm not necessarily I'm not doing this podcast or coming to everybody going, hey, this is real and this is not, or you need to believe this or not believe that. I mean, who knows what's really going on? Maybe there are people that can do witchcraft or shamanism or whatever it is and actually transform. I don't know. But what I do know and what I've had personal experience with is psychic vampires. And
Yes.
that's scary, because and there are some people that actually don't realize, well, I guess a lot of them kind of don't realize what they're doing. But it's a psychic vampire is basically anybody that you can walk into a room with this person and you just feel drained on all different levels, physical, mental, emotional. It's like somebody just, sucked the soul right out of you. And then there are people that are like that, but then there's the entities that are kind of like spirits and ghosts that do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there are
With
definitely
vampires, I've noticed there's a much wider variety of vampires than you ever will find of werewolves. And a lot of those varieties border on being completely plausible for, one reason or another.
right.
A lot of it's much more on a scientific level, I guess you could call it, as opposed to a mythological, form. But the word vampire is so easy to use for so many different aspects. Like you were talking about psychic vampires.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to find psychic werewolves. You're going to find people who suffer from mental illnesses that make them believe that they're wolves.
Yeah. It's what is that disease?
Lycanthropy.
Okay. Yeah.
Lycanthropy.
Yeah, and that's nuts too.
Oh yeah.
That kind of goes over into the medieval mental hospitals and how they would actually treat lycanthropy. Oh man.
Well, here's a fun connection as well. Is way back in Nordic, I think it was, legends. They had warriors that would don bear skins and drink a special brew, and they would, in a way, transform. Yep, wear bears. But from some of that, we actually get the word berserker.
Are you kidding? Wow.
No, these are legitimately, this is back in history. I mean, it's not like a physical transformation necessarily,
right.
But they would get this
they'd mentally go there.
Rage going on.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
And they would kind of just have this, I don't know what you want to call it. I guess battle rage is as good as term as any.
I would think so.
But, they were terrifying.
Wow. Man,
you know. So
that's
completely
crazy.
legitimate forms yet again. Um, you know, so a lot of
Mhm.
it, there are ways for these things to be real without being as, I guess,
Fantastical.
outlandish. Yes,
Right.
fantastical is a much better word. Um, as their mythical counterparts,
Right. True.
you know.
You
So,
know,
and a lot of people will say, "Oh, vampires and werewolves don't exist." Well, maybe not in Hollywood terms,
right.
but if you look at the base idea of it, in some ways they do.
Mhm.
You know, there are people who
Yeah.
feel much more connected to animals than they do people,
Oh, yeah.
and it can be
Yeah, I
for
hear you there.
various reasons. You know,
Mhm.
a child of an abusive home finds, you know, an escape or connection with, say, the family dog or something
Mhm.
as a way of coping,
Yeah. Right.
falls into a
Exactly.
coping mechanism, you know.
Mhm.
Not saying that
Yeah,
that
at
person's
that point,
necessarily a
people.
werewolf, but, you know, if you have severe enough trauma to your psyche,
Mhm.
you could very well show some of these attributes
You
that people
know,
associate with, you know, lycanthropy and werewolves.
right. You know, there was a article and video footage too. There was a story about a girl that was abandoned in the forest, or she ran away to the forest or something. I'm sure somebody can comment and get me straight, but um she was like, or maybe it was a boy, but they lived out in the
A
wild
child,
for so
nonetheless.
long. It was a child, yeah, and it was, you know, or he acted like a wild animal, you know, and it was like where the jungle is, and so they might have had attributes of the monkeys that were
Mhm.
around, you know.
Actually,
Um,
I think what you're talking about is several different stories, because that is
I
not
meshed it all into
a
one.
singular, more or less, it's not a singular idea.
Right.
There are several stories, boys, girls, it doesn't matter, who are supposedly raised by these wild animals. It's, I think they refer to it as the forbidden experiment, kind of the nature versus nurture thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to
And
do some more research on that.
there's a whole nother world
Episode.
to that, and
Yeah.
yeah, definitely much too deep for
Right.
um, what we're talking about.
For tonight.
But since we're, you know, touching on it,
Mhm.
real encounters with supposed werewolves or vampires,
Right.
they happen. I myself, I have absolutely no reason. There is no facts, there's no physical evidence for me to back it up,
Mhm.
other than just this deep-seated belief. I saw a
Mhm.
guy pass by my house window at some weird time of the night. It was a very quiet neighborhood. You remember, same house from
Oh, same
the
house. Okay.
intoxicated time slipper. Yep, same house.
Got it.
Very quiet neighborhood. You remember? Nobody
Yep.
shows up there that you don't
No, it
know.
was absolutely silent. It was just like my house out there
Mm-hmm.
where I grew up. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it was weird to have anybody walk by.
Exactly. Well, weird time of night. This guy just goes walking past, and there was this inner belief, and I hadn't seen any scary movies or anything that would affect my natural thought process, if you will.
Okay.
So I wasn't hyped. I didn't hype myself up, but I took
Mhm.
one look at him and I swore up and down in my heart of hearts he was a vampire. No physical reason.
Wow.
And I know a lot of people out there are laughing to themselves that, you know, maybe I really was worked up, and there's a possibility.
Well,
But I just have this deep-rooted belief that for whatever reason, he was a vampire of some sort.
well, I mean, to me, it's not too outlandish just because that's a lot less crazy than the intoxicated time slipper. I mean, this dude was so drunk. I swear he was so drunk. And he just like, there's just no way he could appear like two young girls that can run,
Yeah.
and make
and
it
we took
across,
a shortcut.
Right, took a shortcut and we're across the street, and then all of a sudden this dude is like right behind us, and it's like, seriously,
Yeah.
you couldn't even walk 4 steps back there, and so
Right.
it's
And
just
the
one of
fact that
those.
we somehow magically disappeared from a not so great hiding spot.
Exactly. There was one time, and I didn't think that this man was a vampire or anything, but it goes hand in hand with seeing people and not knowing really what you're experiencing. I was on the bus, public transportation. I was, 19, I think. I was having a rough day, and I was sitting on the bus, and I was alone. And this man who was he was up 2 seats and across the aisle from me. And he turns around and he hands me this string of beads. And I don't know if I've told this before, but I'm just going to tell it again. He hands me a string of beads, 6 beads in total. 3 of them are orange, 3 of them are blue, and they're on this orange cord. And they're beautiful. And there's this beautiful gold swirled into these beads, And I had this hemp necklace that I had tied. And he had asked me, "Oh, did you, make your own necklace?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And he's like, "Well, I want you to have these. I handmade these. And then you can, put them on a necklace." And it was just a small exchange, But there was such this angelic feeling about this man. And just something seemed so different. Even his eyes, this type of blue, And the bus stops after he hands me these beads. And he gets off the bus. I see him go down the aisle. I see him walk down the stairs. And some other people got off as well. And I'm looking out the window. I never saw him get off the bus. Not one, like nothing. And I've tried to replay it in my head going, okay, was it the angle? Maybe there was other people and I didn't see him. Like trying to rationalize it, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Oh yeah, it's something that's typical. I mean, we did the same thing with our time slipper dude.
Right.
We tried to rationalize it because
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out, okay, this weird thing that just happened, there has to be a reasonable explanation.
Uh-huh. Well, exactly. And it's so many things like this. See, I don't know. I could say you can sit there and say, "Oh, I believe in ghosts," or "I believe in the paranormal," or whatever. But you can take it that step further and go, "You know what? I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to I'm at the edge of that ledge of saying, "You know what? I know." It's hard for me to really trust myself though, because it's such a non-mainstream. It's not as provable as, "Hey, look at that. Pandas are in China." This is a known fact, right? And
Right. I
everybody
mean, they were
questions.
mythological for the longest time.
Well, exactly. But now you can flesh and blood feel them and see them and all this stuff, and you can't do that yet with a lot of this paranormal things. But we're talking, I've had so many experiences since I was so little, and they continue to happen up to today, and it's just, and that's what, inspires all this too, is because there's just these constant questions of, why would it happen? Why would all these things happen? Why would there be such an audience? Why would there be so many people in these online groups? I think that one of the most freeing experiences that I had was after I had done an episode with Shannon over on Into the Fray. Some people commented on the episode and I got some messages. Okay, we're talking about people from different countries, okay? Sitting there going, "You're not alone. I've had the exact same experience." That was like the biggest thing for me.
Oh,
So
yeah.
how can it be fake?
Well, it's like our shadow figures.
Right.
A couple
I
hundred
gotta go to
miles
bed
away.
soon, man. You gonna bring that up? Oh boy,
Maybe,
guys.
a couple hundred miles away, different years. We both experienced the same thing. Neither one of us tell the other at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, the conversation starts. I don't even remember how we brought it up, but we had almost the exact same experience. It was just in a different place.
And I'm telling you, guys, seriously, not just did my sister and I have the same experience, living, 4 hours away, but we're talking, this is not something that we talk about. Okay, this was a very difficult situation for us to deal with. For me, it's caused me a lot of loss of sleep. This isn't something like our children are into the paranormal and stuff, I mean, I've uploaded Instagram pictures of like scary stories to tell in the dark, or Ripley's Believe It or Not, supernatural alien whatever, but I don't share my personal scary stories like that just because it's so real, and I don't want them to think about it and become afraid or anything like that. But I'm telling you, here we never said anything, right? Mm-hmm. And yet one of my daughters said to me, she's like, "Mommy, I saw something at the end of your bed over in the corner." And I was like, "Well, what'd you see?" And she described it exactly. We're talking like a shadow being, a cloaked figure, like the Nazgul from Lord of the Rings, okay?
Yes. Oh, my goodness. That's a great description.
Right? Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And I cannot tell you the sickness that I felt in the pit of my stomach hearing my child say this, okay? And she was only about 5 years old, okay? And I just wanted to forget it. I just wanted to sit there and go, this is not happening. This is not real. And then you come to me months later talking about your stepson seeing the same thing in his room.
Oh, yeah, and I tried to discount what he said, because I was like, well, sometimes the light causes shadows to appear and they look like one thing, and every time I made a reasonable suggestion, he shot me down with perfect logic. No, There was no light here. It was this, it was that.
Exactly.
And he had almost the exact same experience I did. And
it scared him for what, weeks? He wasn't able to go to bed?
Yeah, it upset him for some time, yeah.
See, and that's just...
and so I told him about my experience, because I don't want to turn around and tell him, oh, you're just imagining it. I'm not going to downplay that when I've had the same experience. That would be
exactly
completely immoral of me.
I have to say that I agree with that, because, and that is one thing that I have taught my kids, because when I was younger, you go out and you tell your parents, hey, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm experiencing, and then you're told that you have either an overactive imagination or, oh, that stuff isn't real. And I'm telling you, that destroys a kid's confidence and security. I felt so confused, and I felt so scared and alone that I had nowhere to turn, and I don't think that it's right to tell children that stuff like that doesn't exist when it clearly does, Yeah. So, I mean,
especially when it's coming from a parent who they themselves have experienced something.
Well,
Our mother
exactly.
has even experienced psychic-like dreams. She dreamed of fire for a week straight. She had
Mm.
no idea why. Then she got a call up. A friend's house had burned down.
Wow.
So she won't discount things like that because her own experiences have made her a believer.
Right. Yeah, I don't
You
think
know.
that I really knew about that story. So maybe, I don't know, because we're always going back and forth wondering why we experience the things that we do. And we've often wondered if maybe as if it isn't something that was handed down through like the maternal line or something. And with knowing what you just said now, it would make me lean more towards the fact that that would be the case. And
Mhm.
then the other thing too is there are so many tools out there that you can use to help yourself, whether you're burning sage or you're listening to high vibrational music. And in the last episode I kind of talked about that a bit, and at the end I said that the Aramaic prayer that I usually use when I'm doing a house cleansing. So you know it makes you feel really good and empowered and safe when you know that you can, treat the situation.
Right.
So,
Coming back around from childhood experiences, um, I'm bringing it back full circle to our werewolves and vampires. A friend of
mhm.
mine told me about a werewolf sighting she herself had in Miami, of all places.
Wow.
And her sister both saw it. Uh, they looked out their window, and
Mhm.
because they were in an apartment several stories up, and
Mhm.
in one of the yards below where they were, there was what she described as a werewolf, and his hand was on a clothesline, and he was howling, and they ran to get their mother, but by the time they brought her back, the werewolf was gone.
Oh man.
And
Mm.
it just seemed so fantastical, you know?
Right.
But I looked into it just a little bit out of curiosity, and
Mhm.
there are several sightings online of werewolves in Miami.
Wow, dude. You know,
You wouldn't think about Miami being, a
werewolf
werewolf hotspot,
central.
you know? But
Right.
apparently, on sides of roads and different things, this is a thing. This is something that really has been spotted by many different people.
Man, it reminds me of Linda Godfrey, her book, Monsters Among Us. And there are some crazy stories, man, of like eyewitness accounts that were reported about people actually seeing physical looking werewolves. Like there was even one story about this little girl that actually saw a man transform before her eyes. Okay. I don't even know what I don't even know what I would do. Even with all these experiences that we've had, I think that I'd be scarred for life if I saw something like that. Because I mean, but the weird part about it though, and I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody and they were kind of telling me their impression or intuition about my past lives and stuff, and so it kind of makes sense what I'm about to say compared to what they said, but um there's that part of me that's always been drawn to the darkness. That's why I'm a
Hmm.
night person. That's why I like vampires and these scary tales. If I saw somebody actually transform, though, as much as I would be terrified, I have to say that I'd be so curious. I'd want to know more. I'd want to,
Yeah.
like, somehow, if you could know that person when they're human, and take that
Oh, yeah.
step. Oh my God. I think I'd do it.
I
I
think
think I
I think
would.
more than wanting to become one myself, I would like to set up somehow a safe place to
Oof.
watch someone else, someone comes to you and says, hey, this is what actually happens to me, and set it a safe place and witness it myself. But I don't know how you would proof against a werewolf. How do you know what's werewolf proof? You know what's shark proof. You
Right.
know what's bear proof. But what is werewolf proof? What is
Oh,
vampire proof?
right. Well,
Vampires
and not just
in some
that.
lore can turn into mist.
Oh, yeah, huh?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
I mean,
gosh.
how do you proof against that without dying? Because there has to be
Hmm.
some kind of air,
Well,
you
and
know?
then get this too, though. Like, even if they have to remain in their physical form, let's say you shackle this dude up and he is totally like, you think you're good to go, right? And so he
Hmm.
transforms or whatever. It doesn't mean that he can't sit there and do some kind of mind trick and
Yes,
get you to unshackle him, or just lay down and be like, all
especially
right, I'm your supper.
especially with the vampire. With
Oh,
werewolves, you have to worry more about the brute strength. But with
mhm.
vampires, there's a much more psychic issue going on there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And on that note, how do we know that vampires aren't walking among us,
Mm.
but they're making people forget? Or they're using
Jeez.
glamours to live in plain
Yeah.
sight and using pop culture and the obsession with their kind
You know,
to be blatantly right in front of us.
that reminds me of something when you're talking about like invisibility. I think
Hmm.
that there is a way, and I'm not talking about invisibility, like invisibility can come in different forms. Sure, there's the trying to actually be see-through type of a thing, but there's this whole mind fog to where you can do something
Hmm.
psychically to somebody's mind to where they just don't even register that you exist, rendering you
You know,
completely invisible.
I can give you physical evidence of that, actually. There's a video on YouTube, and I forgot the name,
Mm-hmm.
but you watch the video, and you watch these people, they're dancing or doing something on stage,
Uh-huh.
and then it goes back, and it flat out tells you, I bet you didn't even see the monkey walking across the stage.
Oh,
And then you go back
okay.
and watch it, and there's this guy in a monkey suit just
No
strolling across
way.
the stage.
Really?
And most people don't even see him because of the way our brains work and the way it processes information. It will
Mm,
often deem certain information as irrelevant,
right.
which is why we can tune out certain sounds.
Oh man. Oh man. So,
Have you ever, put on an audiobook or some music and then go about your business?
mhm.
Could you tell me for sure what the last song was played or what just happened in that audiobook?
Oh
A lot of
man,
times you
right?
couldn't.
No, that's
That's,
true.
you know,
Man, so
and
then
there's no reason that if, for instance, these vampires were real,
mhm.
that they couldn't find ways, if they on another level, to completely work within the realms of the physics we know to disguise themselves.
No, exactly. It's crazy because it adds this next layer on it to where
Hmm.
the psychic vampire, not only can he tap into your energy and siphon it for his own, but he can make himself invisible to you mind-wise too,
Hmm.
making him even more powerful.
Hmm.
Man, it's crazy to think about the psychic vampire in this way of having such a mind power to then also be able to have that invisibility to just cause you to not notice him or forget him or whatever, you know?
Exactly. And before anybody points out that, oh, that's, ridiculous, again, I point to the YouTube video. I mentioned. Think about
Right.
everyday life. If you know how people perceive things, it's
Mhm.
very easy to pull a little sleight of hand, a la David Copperfield and Harry Houdini,
Yes, exactly.
to get over on someone without them realizing. It's not hard. You
Yeah,
just
that's
have to
crazy.
know how a person's mind works.
Mhm.
You
Oh,
very
man.
well work within the realm of physics and what we know right now to make that happen.
Right.
Which is why I think vampires are much more realistic than werewolves, even though my heart
Mhm.
still lies with werewolves. My
You
my interest,
know,
that is what I love. But I've always loved myths and lore,
mhm.
you know,
No, I
sometimes over
agree.
reality.
There is it's definitely my home as well with the folklore and legends, and if that could be my realistic world, I would never turn back. I would definitely walk down that path and be like, "See you guys, I definitely belong over here." And you know,
Hold on,
who
let me
like I
pack a
said
bag.
though, who's to say, man? I mean, sure, there's like this realistic side to vampires, but
Mhm.
there are so many layers to this world, and again, I'm going to reference Linda Godfrey's book, um, with there was another story in there talking about how there was these gigantic wolf prints, I believe, and they just vanish.
Mhm.
Okay, this is like snow, and it just goes nowhere. It goes nowhere. Like it just vanishes. So who's to say that there aren't these portals or ways of traveling
Mhm.
between here and whatever lies beyond? I mean,
Oh yeah. And you
it's
have
nuts.
to that's the point where it can branch off to things like quantum physics or just straight up woo woo or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
the thing is we are constantly making scientific discoveries. So
Right.
how are we to say, beyond a shadow of a doubt,
Mhm.
that there are not some rules of physics that we haven't discovered yet?
Right. Oh,
We
that's
can
true.
breathe air, so we can walk on land.
Mhm.
But a fish cannot. It has
Right.
to live in the ocean. So to a fish, the land, is unattainable. Even if it had human intelligence, it's unattainable.
That's true. Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
so it would be beyond a fish's capabilities,
Right.
but it's perfectly natural to us.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have to figure out a way to what is it? Adapt
I mean,
or change,
yeah,
which
I mean that's an
fish have done.
oversimplified.
Right. And so who's to
Yeah,
say though that we can't also figure out a way to morph, change, whatever, to
a
where
beta
then
is
we
an
can
excellent
see
example.
beyond.
A beta, a fish that I can guarantee probably most of your listeners have had one in their lifetime, or maybe
I
their
have
friend
not
has.
had one, ma'am.
I said almost half your listeners. I didn't say anything about you.
All
Beta
right.
is capable of breathing air for
Mhm.
a limited amount of time. In fact, I had one that jumped out of his bowl, and I thought he was dead.
Oh
He
man.
felt dry, but I picked him up, and he started thrashing around,
Oh
freaked
wow.
me out, but I managed to get him back into the bowl. But
Jeez.
any other fish would have died.
Right.
So following into that same idea that I was constructing,
Mhm.
the fish has found a way to, in a way, transcend that limitation. If,
Right.
albeit in a limited faculty, facility, whatever the word is I'm looking for. in a limited way, he's able to transcend, his own rules.
Right. Man, that would be cool.
So
we need to learn how to do that.
What hubris is that in us to think that we're not just fish in a different pond?
Right. Man. So many thoughts, so many what ifs, and so many possibilities. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I think those higher thoughts need to be left for another episode.
Yeah. No, that's for
and
sure.
Probably with more learned people than I.
Yeah, I need to brush up on my stuff too, and keep walking down this path and discovering more, and yeah, we'll definitely keep adventuring. So,
as we all should.
Yes, that's for sure. Well, I think it's about that time. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. It has been absolutely fantastic. This has definitely been a very fun episode for me to do. So, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. I'm here anytime.